All right, we're going to talk about adding and subtracting real numbers. Okay, so real numbers, again, they're whole numbers, natural numbers, they are integers, which is positive, negative whole numbers, and then we have those rational numbers as well, right? So we got to be able to add those, which is going to be fractions. So we got to learn how to add and subtract fractions. And then irrational numbers, we'll talk a little bit more down the road. So first of all, I wanted to talk about what they call an additive or, additive inverse. You might see this as being called opposites. Okay. In other words, if they were saying the additive inverse of -3, that would be 3. And additive inverse of 3 would be -3. In other words, these two numbers, if we were to add them together, would come out to be 0. So if I said -1/4, the additive inverse of -1/4 would be +1/4. Because add those two together, it becomes 0. If I said it was A, then your additive inverse would be -A. If I said -B, your additive inverse would be +B. Okay? So that's additive inverse. And then in terms of subtracting, so if I had A minus B, well, that's the same thing as, so you guys remember this, adding the opposite. So it's the same thing as saying A plus a -B, okay? So I'm changing, so adding the inverse, meaning I'm changing the subtraction to addition, but then I'm negating the B, okay? So this means the same thing. So this is mainly used for subtracting, all right? And then the next thing I want to talk about is primes. Okay, now if I was to break a number down into primes, then you will use something we call a factor tree. So for example, if I had to break down 10, that'd be just 2 times 5. And I know that that's where I would stop because 2 is a prime number, 5 is a prime number. And a prime number is any number that only has factors of 1 and itself, meaning I can't break it down anymore because the 2 only has 2 times 1 and the 5 only has 5 times 1. There's no two numbers that multiply together to give you 5 besides 5 and 1. So let's try 12. Well, 12 breaks down to, you might say, okay, 2 times 6. Great. Well, 2 is already prime, so we just bring that down. And then 6 is 2 times 3. Okay? So that would be the primes of 12. All right? So the first example I want to do for you is talking about adding fractions. So let's say I had 7 over 12 plus 1 over 10. Okay? So in order for me to add or subtract fractions, so add or subtract fractions, I need common denominator. Okay? In other words, I call the denominators bottoms. Okay? So in other words, this bottom and this bottom has to be the same. Okay? Or these denominators have to be the same. So I broke these two numbers down on top. 12 is 2 times 2 times 3, and 10 is 2 times 5. So what I want you to think about is this. Okay? So think of it as these two are two twin sisters, and they're starting to realize that one sister is getting other things from her parents, and the other sister is realizing the same thing. So they now want to, say that the parents favor one sibling over the other. So you're like, well, I want whatever I don't have that she has. All right. So what you're going to do is while you're standing over here, so this sister over here, I know that's kind of awful. Let's try that again. Would it be easier if I did it this way? There we go. So if I was this sister here, I would say, what does she have? In other words, what does she have that I don't have? Well, she has an extra 5 here, right? That I don't have a 5, she has a 5. So I want that 5, right? Great. So what you would do is say, okay, so let me do this. Oh, no, she will be done anyways. So let's take her out. So she wants a 5 because the other sister has a 5, so she wants that 5. So now you're standing over here. Okay, and you're saying, what does she have that I don't have? I have a 2. She has 2 2s. So I want another 2. All right. And then what else does she have that I don't have? Well, she also has a 3. Right? So now if you look at both sides as a whole, do you agree that they both have 2 2s, a 3 and a 5? 2 2, 3 and a 5. Okay? So with that being said, so what that means is, so take a look at this. Watch this carefully. I got 7 over 12 plus 1 over 10. So notice the things in red. So if I multiply this by 5 and this bottom by 6, because 2 times 3 is 6, okay, then my denominators should be the same. But I can't just multiply the bottom of the fraction by some number and call it done. If I do it to the bottom, I have to do it to the top as well. Okay? Because if you notice this right here, 5 over 5, right? 5 divided by 5 would equal to 1. So I'm really multiplying the fraction by 1 so the fraction stays at the same value. Okay, so I didn't change the value of that. Same thing here. So if you want to think of it as this, that's certainly fine. Okay, so when I multiply these, the top, I'm going to get a 35 over 60 plus a 6 over 60. So now notice that my denominators are the same. So what I would do is add the top and keep the bottom. So again, I add the top and keep the bottom. Okay? So again, adding, subtract, fraction, I need common denominators. The best way I know how to describe it in the simplest way is to break them down into primes. If you break them down into primes, then you can say, what does she have that I don't have? Okay? Once you do that, if you notice that both sisters are going to have the same things, that means the bottom's going to be the same now, right? Because they both have the same thing. All right? Now, the top itself could be totally different, right? So if you have twin siblings, majority of the time they look the same and everything else, but in terms of their heart and their intentions and stuff like that, might be very different. They might be two very different people. So the common denominator is the fact that they have the same materialistic things, but the top means that they have maybe different hearts, different intentions of things, okay? So those could be different, but bottom line is that they both wanted the same materialistic things, all right? So that's adding or subtracting fractions. All right, so what else is there that you may need? And if you have 3 fractions, then you want all 3. Well, you don't have to have all 3 to have the same denominator, but you could if you wanted to. All right. I see one here that has 4 of them. So let's take this as an example here. This is Let me see here. It's negative 13 over 16 plus 1/4 minus a negative 3 over 8 minus 11 over 32. So what you could do is say, okay, I'm going to add these two, and I'm going to add these two, and then I can add these two, okay? It's up to you what you want to do. Or you can say, you know what? This is not too bad. I'm going to do them all together at once. That's certainly fine. So let's take a look at the denominators. So if I look at the denominators, I see 16, 4, 8, and 32, okay? 16, and when you break down 16, here, might as well do it. So you might think it's 4 times 4, and that's 2 times 2, times 2 times 2, and then 4 would just be 2 times 2. 8 is going to be 2 times 4, which is 2 times 2 times 2. 32, kind of a big deal. Let's see here, 2 and 16, 2 and 8, 2 and 4, 2 and 2, okay? So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 would give you 32, okay? All right, so let's put this into place here, all right? So we got 16 here's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and then the 4 is a 2 times 2, and the 8 is 2 times 2 times 2, and 32 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Whole lot of 2's, okay? So let's take a look. Nice part about this is that they're all 2's. So it's not like it's going to be tricky in terms of what they need, right? So if the first sister says, what do they have that I don't have? Well, she has more than sister number 2 here and sister number 3 here, right? She just doesn't have as many as her. Well, she has 4, she has 5, so she needs another 2, okay? But if you notice, it's the same throughout, right? If I was this sister, what do they have that I don't have? Well, bottom line is this sister has the most. She has 5 2's. I only have 2 2's. So I need 3 more 2's. And if I was this sister here, same thing. She still has the most, so I want 2 2's. Well, sad part is that this sister ain't going to get anything because she already has everything that every single other sister has, which is kind of depressing as well, but we'll look at it that way. Okay, so let's look here. Let's rewrite this. So again, I have a negative 13 over 16 plus 1/4 minus negative 3 over 8 minus 11 over 32, okay? So question is, so each of these divisions here that blocked off is, the red is what I would have to multiply each of those fractions. So the 11 over 32, nothing is needed. So let me put that right under here, okay? Let me put this appropriately. Put this under here and move this over here a little bit. There we go, okay? There we go. All right, so that's better. All right, so if we look at it this way, so the 16 needs to multiply a 2 on the bottom, but if you do it on the bottom, you have to do it to the top. The 4 is going to get multiplied. 2 times 2 times 2 is going to be 8. And then over here, a 4. And over here, nothing, okay? So what do I have? I'm going to have a negative 26 over 32 plus an 8 over 32 minus a negative 12 over 32 and then minus 11 over 32, okay? So one of the things I want to point out is this right here, minus a negative, okay? Minus a minus. So that is going to actually become a plus. But, so let's write that, negative 26 over 32 plus 8 over 32 plus 12 over 32 minus 11 over 32. So one of the things I say is that we're going to add, right? So the rule is I'm going to add or subtract the top and then keep the bottom. So, okay, so when we add and subtract the top is negative 26 plus 8 plus 12 minus 11 all over and keep the bottom, 32, okay? So now the question is, what's negative 26 plus 8 plus 12 minus 11, okay? So let's see here, negative 26 plus 8. You can put that in your calculator. Negative 26 plus 8. That's negative 18. Okay, so this is going to be negative 18 plus 12 minus 11 over 32, which is negative 6 minus over 32. So negative 18 plus 12 is negative 6. And then minus 11. So now I have a negative 17 over 32. So now that will be my answer. Okay? Any questions on that? Now, adding, subtracting regular numbers, you can put those in your calculator, or that's basically what I did on top there. Okay? And then with decimals, you were doing decimals, like let's say, for example, negative 6.6 plus a negative 2.4. I would stack these on top of each other, so this would become a negative 6.6 minus a 2.4. So what you have to make sure of is to line up that decimal. Okay? So since they're both going to be negative, that means, so think of it this way. I'm $6.60 in debt. And now I'm adding another debt that's going to be $2.40, right? So that means I'm going to go further in debt, right? So that means my answer is definitely going to be negative, but I'm going further into debt, so therefore I'm going to have to add these. So 6 plus 4 is 10, carry the 1, and 9. Okay, so 1 plus 6 plus 2 is 9, so it's going to be negative 9. So this is just negative 9, and that would be my answer. Okay, but make sure that you do line up the decimals. Other than that, I hope everything else is good, and this covers both addition and subtraction of real numbers. You got any questions?